is Hipaa? HIPAA, which stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, is legislation signed into law in 1996 by Bill Clinton. This legislation provides security provisions and data privacy to keep the protected health information of patients secure. HIPAA consists of 5 sections or titles that provide guidelines for specific groups. Title I protects health insurance coverage for workers and their families that change or lose their jobs, as well as limits the ability to deny coverage due to a pre-existing condition. Title II prevents healthcare fraud and abuse that requires the establishment of national standards for electronic healthcare transactions and national identifiers for providers, employers, and health insurance plans. Title II includes 5 rules: the privacy rule, the security rule, the transactions and code sets rule, the unique identifiers rule, and the enforcement rule. Title III provides guidelines for pre-tax medical spending accounts. Title IV also provides guidelines for pre-tax medical spending accounts, as well as changing health insurance law and deduction for medical insurance. And lastly, Title V, the final title, covers company-owned life insurance policies and provisions for treating without citizenship. Who is covered by HIPAA? HIPAA covers the following entities: all workers in a healthcare facility or a private office, students, non-patient care employees, insurance companies, billing companies, and electronic medical record companies. The main goals of HIPAA are to limit the use of protected health information to those with the need to know, also known as the minimum necessary standard, and to penalize entities that do not comply with the confidentiality regulations. Protected health information, or PHI, is the personally identifiable health information that HIPAA regulates and protects. Some examples of protected health information include patient names, dates, such as date of birth or date of discharge, social security numbers, addresses, telephone and fax numbers, and email addresses. Whether intentional or accidental, unauthorized disclosure of protected health information, or PHI, is considered a violation of HIPAA. Confusion about the rules has been cited by many as a potential obstacle to interoperability of digital health information. Let's discuss the events in which PHI can be shared with and without authorization.
Hey, I'm here to pick up patient Smith's test results.
Oh, sure, right here.
Good, thank you.
No problem.
Notice here that the protected health information, which in this case was patient Smith's test results, were given to the provider without authorization or verification. Let's try this again.
Hey, I'm here to pick up patient Smith's test results.
Sure, can I just see your ID first?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Here you are.
Thank you so much. Looks good.
In this scenario, the receptionist asked for the provider's ID card, which allowed him to verify that the provider was working on this patient's case. Protected health information can be used or disclosed to provide, coordinate, or manage a patient's medical treatment or services. When can you share PHI? A covered entity may use or disclose PHI without authorization under the following conditions. Providers or other covered entities are allowed to disclose PHI to the individual patient without authorization. Providers can share PHI between each other for the purposes of treating the patient, including consultations and referrals. Health plans and providers are allowed to share PHI with each other so that providers can receive reimbursement for services. Specific conditions may require that PHI is shared for the purpose of public interest. The public interest may outweigh the need for a patient's personal privacy. A limited data set of PHI can be shared as long as certain identifiers are removed from the information. PHI can be broken down into 18 identifiers, some of which include name, social security number, email, date of birth, and license plate number. An individual can release their PHI with authorization for the purposes of qualifying for health insurance or life insurance. A valid authorization to release protected health information includes the person signing to release information, providing a description of why the information is needed, verification using photo ID, name, or the person or organization related to the disclosure of the information. HIPAA administrative safeguards were created to help establish the foundation of the covered entity's security program and protect electronic PHI. These are the administrative functions that should be implemented to meet the security standards. The HIPAA administrative safeguards are divided into 9 main areas, all of which covered entities need to go over and find out how, if at all, they can implement into their regular procedures. The aspects are security management process, assigned security responsibility, workforce security, information access management, security awareness and training, security incident procedures, contingency plans, evaluation, and business associate contracts and other arrangements. Here is an example of how administrative safeguards are not being implemented.
Oh, hey, can I borrow your logon? I'm new here and I didn't get an ID yet.
Yeah, sure. Here you go.
Thanks.
Notice how the hospital employee input her password and shared her login information, which could have provided unauthorized access to electronic PHI. Let's try this one more time.
Hey, I'm new here and I don't have a login yet. Can I just borrow yours?
I can't actually do that. Why don't you just contact the IT department? They'll set you up with your own login.
Okay, do you know where that is?
Yeah, it's right there.
Okay, cool.
In the second scenario, the hospital employee demonstrates her compliance to administrative safeguards by advising the new hospital employee to consult the IT department for his issue, which she learned through proper training. Some common examples through which administrative safeguards are maintained at organizations are employee training, security awareness, written policies and procedures, incident response plans, business associate agreements, and background checks. It is required that all medical office staff, including management, undergo security training and have periodic reminders and user education so that they stay current on the laws and guidelines. Physical safeguards are designed to prevent the physical removal of protected health information from a facility. These safeguards may vary from facility to facility based on the function of a facility. Physical safeguards fall under 4 different types of standards. Facility access controls include things like surveillance cameras, on-site security guards, alarms, IDs, and visitor badges. Workstation use covers appropriate use of laptops and desktops. Some examples are not leaving a workstation or physical copies of protected health information unattended, the use of screen protectors, and only performing relevant functions on said workstations. Workstation security covers restricting access to protected health information by unauthorized users. Some examples include encryption of data, enabling auditing, installing anti-malware programs, tracking new programs, and installing a firewall. Device and media controls govern how hardware, electronic media, and physical files that contain protected health information enter or exit a facility. Some examples include proper disposal of protected health information and having proper data backup and storage. Here is an example of how PHI is not being protected through physical safeguards.
Hey, can I talk to you for a second?
Sure. It looks like I'm all set here. Where's the thumb drive?
In this scenario, the hospital employee did not take any protective measures to cover his screen, which allowed a nosy onlooker to take photos of the PHI on his laptop. Also, the employee left his laptop and flash drive unattended when he left the room, which was then stolen. Let's see how physical safeguards can be used to protect PHI.
Hey, there's a lot of people around. Let me make sure that I have my screen protector up.
Using screen protectors is a great way to make sure that physical safeguards are being met. Here is an example of how to not properly dispose of confidential information.
Oh, I don't need this anymore. Oh well.
Here is an example of how you should be properly disposing of confidential information using physical safeguards.
I don't need this information anymore. I guess I'll shred it.
When disposing of PHI, you should always be placing your physical documents into shredders or designated receptacles. HIPAA's security rule specifies 5 technical safeguards to protect electronic patient health information and the systems that access it. Access control, creating procedures for how a practice accesses their patient management software and records. Examples of this include using unique employee login and password to identify and track user activity, or setting up automatic log-offs after a specified amount of time. Audit controls, monitoring activity in systems which use electronic PHI. Examples of this include installing a system to monitor electronic PHI and regularly reviewing the audit records. Integrity controls, practices must use reasonable measures to authenticate electronic PHI. Examples include taking security measures to confirm the status of electronic PHI by using software with automatic data integrity testing capabilities. Authentication controls require the person who wants to access the data to prove that they are who they say they are. Examples include using a 2-step authentication process, voice authorization, or using electronic signature software. Transmission security controls state that practices need to ensure data is not modified without detection and that protected health information is encrypted when necessary. Examples include using security measures and encryption or assigning authentication to employees. Here is an example of how technical safeguards are not being implemented to protect PHI.
Can I talk to you outside for a second?
Yeah.
A few moments later.
Oh, sweet. I don't have to log back on.
Here is an example of how technical safeguards are being followed properly.
Can I talk to you outside for a second?
Yeah.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Oh man, the screen's locked again. Oops.
Computer screens that automatically log off after a certain period of time can be used to protect PHI. Under the minimum necessary rule, it requires that any covered entity should limit their access to PHI unless absolutely necessary. For example, only accessing the patient's PHI when treating them or getting obtained reimbursement for the care provided. This is an example of not following the minimum necessary standard.
Hey, I heard Drake checked into the ER.
No way. You want to see why he's here?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Oh.
You should not access patient records when you are interested in a patient that you are not treating. Let's try this one more time.
Hey, did you guys hear that Drake checked into the ER?
No way. You want to see why he's here?
Yeah. Hey guys, if you're not treating for him, I think you guys should check it. It's a violation.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't want to get in trouble.
A patient has several rights when it comes to their PHI. A few examples include the right to file a complaint, the right to access their PHI, and the right to amend their PHI reasonably. This is an example of a patient requesting an amendment to their PHI.
Hi, I just received a copy of my medical record and my date of birth is incorrect. Can you please change it for me? Can I just get your ID? Sure, yeah. Here you go. Alright, I can change it for you, no problem. Alright, thank you. You're welcome.
Notice here that you should always confirm the identity of the patient if amendments are being changed, and double-check the information they request to change. Thanks for watching our Hipaa training video. I hope you learned more about Hipaa and how you can recognize and avoid committing Hipaa violations at your workplace.